All right. And since we're going to be mainly in Genesis, I'm just going to give a little bit overview about the book. All right. So Genesis is felt to be written by Moses. Um, and is thought to be written between 1446 BC to 1406 BC. And where was it mainly focuses in Egypt and Canaan. And why was it written? To demonstrate that God is sovereign and loves his creation. All right. And then one other definition I want to give before we start is covenant. And covenant is agreement, a pact, or a bond between God and humans. And that's just the working definition that I want us to have. You can have other types of covenant that doesn't involve God, but here we're talking about God. All right. So this lesson actually was motivated by our previous Bible study where we're talking about, Stephen and how he was so bold and he knew the history. He was very well educated in what he was talking about. And so I feel like it would be good for us to also get a little bit more educated about certain parts of the Bible. I don't know about you, but whenever I read this begot that and begot that and begot that, I'm like, I'm done. I don't want to hear no more. Let's move to the part where it has sentences I can understand. So I thought maybe we can learn it together. Who begot what and why is that important? So we're going to start from the beginning. We're going to start with Adam. So Adam was made by God, right? He was made by God in God's image. And if you have your Bibles, Genesis chapter 5. Verse 1 and 2, it says, "This is a document containing the family records of Adam. On the day that God created man, he made him a likeness of God. He created them male and female. When they were created, he blessed them and called them mankind." So that was how Adam came to be about. And when Adam came to be about, I'm going to go back to Genesis chapter 1, verse 28. It says, "God blessed them, and God said to them, 'Be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, and subdue it. Rule the fish of the sea, the birds of the sky, and every creature that crawls on the earth.'" So that was I call it the first covenant, right? Or the first agreement of what was to happen with man, Adam, that God made. So when God made Adam, he made also Eve. And when they had relation, they had Cain and Abel, which we're not going to focus on. And then after they had Cain and Abel, they had a son named Seth. And that we read about that in Genesis chapter 5. Verse 3 says, "Adam was 130 years old when he fathered a son in his likeness, according to his image, and named him Seth." So after Adam had Seth, it says he lived 800 years. So it's documented that Adam lived 930 years before he passed. That's a long time. And as we go through, you're going to see that the people in the beginning lived for a very long time. Unlike us today, we're amazed when somebody's like 105. All right. So after Adam had Seth, then Seth also had other children. And you can read about that in Genesis 5, going through chapter verses 6 and on. It talks about Seth having Enosh, and then Enosh had Canaan or Kenan, and then Kenan had Mahalalel, and then he had Jared, and then he had Enoch. And you read in Genesis 5:23-24, it talks about, it says, so Enoch's life lasted 365 years. Enoch walked with God, then he was not there because God took him. So that's an interesting fact, right? Enoch was just taken. So he's not one that died, right? God just took him. I thought that was interesting little bits that we should know. And then, so Enoch had what Methuselah. And interesting fact about this guy, right? In Genesis 5:27, you learn that he lived 969 years. That's old. That's old and dirt. But I thought that was interesting. That's not something that we generally talk about, but that was cool. And in Methuselah is interesting because he's the grandfather of Noah, we're going to talk about. So then Methuselah had Lamech, and forgive me for the pronunciation. It's all in the Bible. You can read it and pronounce it for yourself. Just go to chapter 5 of Genesis. It's all listed there. And then Lamech had Noah, and in Genesis 5:29, I thought it was interesting, the name Noah, right? It says, and he named him Noah, saying, this one will bring us relief from the agonizing labor of our hands, caused by the ground the Lord has cursed. And if you know anything about Noah, we know what came of his life and what he did. And that points to me about how, names are important and meanings of names are important. All right, so I went on this little history about Adam and all the way to Noah, so we can learn that, okay, Adam came about. He had a covenant with God that he should go out, multiply, take care of the earth. And unfortunately, Adam did not do that, right? Because him and his wife did sin against God. But God is faithful because he always keep his promise. In Genesis 3:15, there was a promise made. And as we continue our lesson, we will see how this came about. And now reads, I will put hostility between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He will strike your head, and you will strike his heel. And this was God talking to Satan after the sin of Adam and Eve. All right, so that is the descendant of Adam all the way to Noah. So now we're going to learn a little bit about Noah and his descendants. So we're going to jump to Genesis chapter 6. All right. And then Minister J, I'm going to ask you to read for us verses 9 through 10.
Genesis chapter 6, 9, and 10. These are the generations of Noah. Noah was Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations, and Noah walked with God. And Noah begat 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth.
All right, thank you. So just like his name, right? He was a righteous man and walked with God. All right, so the 3 sons, we have Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And those 3 sons are important because they're gonna continue on and produce more children that God will use to fulfill his plan. So Japheth had his children, and you can read that about his children in Genesis 10 and 2. I'm not going to focus on him. Ham also had his children, and you can read that Genesis 10 and 6. And then in Genesis 9 and 18, it talks about Ham being the father of Canaan. And he fathered Cush, who also fathered on Nimrod. And the interesting fact about Nimrod that you read in Genesis chapter 10, 8 and 9 was that he was considered to be the first mighty man. He was really good with his hands. He was a hunter, and he was deemed to be mighty in front of God. So that's interesting fact about him. But out of Ham's children, Canaan is really the more famous or more talked about in the Bible, because he then his generation will be the Canaanites, which a lot of the time the Israelites were at war with, and which is interesting because they all came from the same place. But all right, so the one that we're going to focus on, because that's the one that leads to the promise, is Shem. So Shem had 5 children. And the one that leads to the promise, it's in Genesis chapter 11, verses 10 to 26. It's Arphaxad, Arphaxad. So out of him, you have Shala, then you have Eber, and then Eber begot Peleg, and he had Ru, he had Sarad, who had Nalal, who had Terah. And Terah is important because he got Abram. He got Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Haran is important because he got Lot. And Lot is important because he's Abram's nephew that he traveled with him after God asked him to. And you can read this in Genesis chapter 11, verses 27 through 32. All right. So why is Abram important? Because actually, I'm going to backtrack because I didn't tell you about why Noah was important. So Noah was a righteous man, and God also made a covenant with him. So, sorry, somebody's not taking a shower. In Genesis chapter 9, verses 8 through 17, Minister Jay, can you read that for us?
Genesis chapter 9, you want 8 through 17?
Yes, please.
Okay. And God spake unto Noah and to his sons with him, saying, And I, behold, I establish my covenant with you and with your seed after you, and with every living creature that is with you, of the fowl, of the cattle, and of every beast of the earth with you, from all that go out of the ark to every beast of the earth. And I will establish my covenant with you. Neither shall all flesh be cut off any more by the waters of a flood, neither shall there any more be a flood to destroy the earth. And God said, This is the token of the covenant which I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for perpetual generations. I do set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be for a token of a covenant between me and the earth. And it shall come to pass when I bring a cloud over the earth that the bow shall be seen in the cloud. And I will remember my covenant, which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. And the waters shall no more become a flood to destroy all flesh. And the bow shall be in the cloud, and I will look upon it, that I may remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is upon the earth. And God said unto Noah, This is the token of the covenant which I have established between me and all flesh that is upon the earth. And the sons of Noah that went forth of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and Ham is the father of Canaan. These are the three sons of Noah, and of them was the whole earth overspread.
All right, thank you. So that was important because that was a covenant that God made with Noah and mankind after the flood. And that's after the earth was destroyed from the corruption of the people at the time. And Noah and his children and wife and were found to be worthy to be saved because of the Noah was found to be a righteous man. So that's why Noah was important, and God used him to fulfill his purpose. All right, I got ahead of myself. All right, so now Abraham, right? So Abraham is a descendant of Noah, as we went through. And God called him out of where he was living with his family and made a covenant with him. And we read that in Genesis chapter 12, verse 1 through 3. It says, The Lord said to Abram, Go out from your land, your relatives, and your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great, and I will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you. I will curse anyone who treats you in contempt, and all the peoples on earth will be blessed through you. All right. And then in Genesis 18, verses 17 through 19, it says, Then the Lord said, Should I hide what I am about to do from Abraham? Abraham is to be a great and powerful nation, and all the nations of the earth will be blessed through him. For I have chosen him so that he will command his children and his house after him to keep the way of the Lord by doing what is right and just. This is how the Lord will fulfill to Abraham what he promised. So this shows, why Abraham is important is that God chose him. He called him, set him apart to fulfill the plans that he had. All right, so now we're going to talk about the lineage of, or the genealogy of Abraham. All right, so Abraham had many sons, but the famous ones are Ishmael, which we've talked about before. He got from Hagar, Sarah, his wife Sarah's concubine. Interesting fact is that Ishmael was sent away, and he ended up having 12 sons. And you read about Ishmael in Genesis 25, verses 12 through 17. All right. And so Abraham and Sarah had a son named Isaac in their later years. Read about that in Genesis 21, verses 1 through 7. And Isaac was the promised seed. So Isaac then married Rebekah, and Rebekah was actually his cousin, his mom's brother's daughter. And Isaac and Rebekah had two children, Esau and Jacob. And we talked about Esau and Jacob before, where Esau gave away his birthright. So Jacob became the promised seed. I thought it was interesting. You read about it in Genesis 28 and 9, that Esau actually married one of Ishmael's children. So I thought that was interesting. All right, so then Jacob went back to where Rebekah came from and married his cousin. So he went to his uncle and worked for the wife that he wanted, and the wife that he wanted was Rachel. But he worked for 7 years for Rachel, and you read that in Genesis 29 through 30. There was a whole TV drama in the Bible. You don't have to go on social media. You don't even have to watch Lifetime. All you got to do is read your Bible, and there's drama. So Jacob worked for 7 years because he saw Rachel and he wanted to marry her, right? But his own uncle, like his mom's brother, tricked him and gave him the other daughter, the one that maybe, I don't know, she was older. He didn't want her, maybe. Anyways, so after he tricked him, he said, well, if you work for me longer, you can have the one that you really want, right? So he did. He worked for longer so he can get Rachel. And then after he served the uncle, he said, okay, give me everything and let me go my own way and live my own life. So you read about these Genesis 29 and 30. And out of all this loveliness, there were 4 women involved. Jacob had 12 children. And so that's became the nation of Israel, the 12 tribes. That's how we get the 12 tribes. All right. And so the 12 tribes became the nation of Israel, and God made a covenant with them. And so we're going to read about that covenant in Exodus chapter 19, verses 3 and 8.
3 and 8 or 3 through 8?
3 through 8. If you have it, can you read it for us?
Mm-hmm. And Moses went up unto God, and the Lord called unto him out of the mountain, saying, Thus shalt thou say to the house of Jacob, and tell the children of Israel, Ye have seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bare you on eagle's wings, and brought you unto myself. Now therefore, if ye will obey my voice indeed, and keep my covenant, then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine. And ye shall be unto me a kingdom of priests and an holy nation. These are the words which thou shalt speak unto the children of Israel. And Moses came and called for the elders of the people, and laid before their faces all these words which the Lord commanded him. And all the people answered together, and said, All that the Lord hath spoken we will do. And Moses returned the words of the people unto the Lord.
All right. Thank you. So here you see that the Lord made a covenant with the 12 tribes saying, Be my people and I'll be your God. And they said, Okay, where do I sign? Where's the dotted line? So they signed on board and became God's people. But as we will learn, they were not able to fulfill that. So interesting tidbit. So Jacob's first wife, Leah, had 6 children. And the third born and the fourth born, important. So Levi was the priestly tribe, right? And that's where Moses is from. And then Judah is important because we're going to talk about King David, and that's the tribe that he's from. And then Rachel, who is the beloved of Jacob, had 2 sons, Benjamin, who is the youngest, and Benjamin is the tribe of our beloved Paul, the one that wrote like all the Bible, all the New Testament, basically. So that's just important fact to know. And then Joseph is the one that saved all the Israelites from starvation, right? Because if God didn't send him off to Egypt, then, well, God will have found a different way. But we would say if he wasn't obedient and didn't go, then his brothers wouldn't have food, and we won't be talking about who we're going to be talking about next. All right, so now that leads me to the lineage of David. And so the drama continues. I think I like drama, but so and you read about this in Genesis 38. So Judah, who is the fourth child of Jacob and Leah, married a Canaanite, right? Which we said before, they're all from the same family because that was one of Noah's children's lineage. And so Judah had 3 sons. One son married Tamar, and then he died. And then by customs of their traditions, the next brother had to marry her. And then he died. So Judah said, hold up. This lady's killing all my kids. I'm not giving any more of my kids to her. Like, I don't care about tradition or not. Okay? So he tells her, well, why don't you go by your dad's house? When my younger one is of age, we'll come for you. So she went in obedient, And time passed, like, all right, this young one must have been of age by now, and nobody's coming for her. But she got a word that her father-in-law was coming to town. So basically, she dressed up pretty and tricked him and slept with him. So you read about all this drama in Genesis 38. And so out of that, she got pregnant and had twins, Zerah and Perez. And out of that, we get King David, right? So if we go to Matthew chapter 1. If I can, yeah. All right, so Matthew chapter 1, verses 2 and 4. Do you have that, Minister J?
Abraham begat Isaac, and Isaac begat Jacob, and Jacob begat Judah and his brethren. And Judah begat Pharez and Zara and Tamar, and Pharez begat Esrom, and Esrom begat Aram. And Aram begat Aminadab, and Aminadab begat Nason, and Nason begat Salmon.
All right. So, and then Salmon got with Rahab. And Rahab, you read about her in Joshua chapter 2. So she was a prostitute that basically hid the Israelite spies were sent to see if the new place that they were going to, if they can take it, the people. So she got with Salmon, and then they had Boaz. And hopefully you guys know about Boaz, because I think you do, because you know about Ruth. And Ruth, interestingly enough, is a Moabite. And if you remember in the beginning, we talk about Lot, right? Lot was the nephew of Abraham. So again, everybody's related. So Boaz and Ruth got together, and they had Obed, and he had Jesse. And ta-da, we got King David, right? So, and you read that Matthew Gospel, chapter 1, verses 5 through 6, basically just said what I just told you. So that's how David came about. And what was important about David? So we read that 2 Samuel chapter 7, verses 8 through 16.
8 through 16.
Yes, please.
Okay. Now, therefore, so shalt thou say unto my servant David, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, I took thee from a sheepcote, from following the sheep, to be ruler over my people, over Israel. And I was with thee whithersoever thou wentest, and have cut off all thine enemies out of thy sight, and have made thee a great name, like unto the name of the great men that are in the earth. Moreover, I will appoint a place for my people Israel, and will plant them, that they may dwell in a place of their own, and move no more. Neither shall the children of wickedness afflict them any more as before time. And since the time that I commanded judges to be over my people Israel, and have caused thee to rest from all thine enemies, Oh, I didn't read that right. Also, the Lord telleth thee that he will make thee an house. And when thy days be fulfilled, and thou shalt sleep with thy fathers, I will set up thy seed after thee, which shall proceed out of thy bowels, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build an house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I will be his father, and he shall be my son. If he commit iniquity, I will chasten him with the rod of men, and with the stripes of the children of men. But my mercy shall not depart away from him, as I took it from Saul, whom I put away before thee. And thine house and thy kingdom shall be established forever before thee. Thy throne shall be established forever.
All right. So here the Lord is promising David that his offspring, his lineage will reign forever. Okay. So how can that be? So let's talk about the lineage of David. So we know from our previous studies about how David got with Bathsheba, right? And she was the wife of one of his soldiers that he basically put in the front line during wartime, so he would die and he would be able to go on and live with his wife and not feel a certain way about it. Anyways, he repented, he was forgiven, and God blessed their union with a son named Solomon. And Solomon became king. And so out of that lineage, we do get to Christ, who is the promise. And interesting enough, David's other son, Nathan, also leads to Christ. So let's learn about that. All right, so in Matthew's gospel, we've been at chapter 1. If we look at chapter 1, verses 7, verses 7 through 16, basically list all the people that Solomon's had, and his children and their children, all the way to Joseph, who is the earthly father of Christ. And then if you look at Luke's gospel, Luke chapter 3, starting from verse 23 through 38. He lists the lineage as it gets to Mary, but Nathan is David's other son with Bathsheba. And so through that lineage, you get to Mary's father. In Luke's gospel, it says son of Joseph, son of Eli, who is actually Mary's father. And with that, we get the fulfillment that David's offspring, right, will rule forever. And so that's Jesus Christ who fulfills the new covenant. And we can read about that new covenant in Jeremiah 31. Verses 31 through 34.
Want me to read?
Yes, please.
Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day that I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt, which my covenant they break, although I was an husband unto them, saith the Lord. But this shall be the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel. After those days, saith the Lord, I will put my law in their inward parts and write it in their hearts, and will be their God, and they shall be my people. And they shall teach no more every man his neighbor and every man his brother, saying, Know the Lord. For they shall all know me, from the least of them unto the greatest of them, saith the Lord. For I will forgive their iniquity, and I will remember their sin no more.
All right, thank you. And so that will be fulfilled, that is fulfilled through Jesus Christ, right? Because when God looks at us as believers, he's not seeing our sins, he's seeing his son who died on the cross for us. In Hebrews chapter 7, verse 22, it says, by much more, Jesus has become a surety of a better covenant. And then Hebrews 9 and 15, it says, and for this reason, he is the mediator of the new covenant by means of death for the redemption of the transgressions under the first covenant, that those who are called may receive the promise of eternal inheritance. All right, so through this begot that and begot that, we've learned the importance of genealogy and how God uses people throughout time to fulfill his promises, and that we all related. And if you want a good read the Bible. There's some interesting stuff in there. All right. So as always, I leave time for you guys to comment or ask any questions.
Well, anybody want to go first? I just want to mute myself.
Mhm.
I definitely want to say something about this.
It was a wonderful review. You know, I love Bible history, and so I enjoyed the trip, but it was a wonderful review.
I can tell you that my particularly when you talk about the genealogy is heavily marked, and I got the age on the margins of all of these people. You know, you can see that it's heavily marked. But what really interests me is the because you can always pick up something that you're not aware of particularly, and I agree with you about the drama. I think this is if it were not the gospel, the truth of God, it would still be the best literary work ever, bar none. Just Genesis and Exodus alone would be anything else written, just for the page turning kind of thing appeal it has. But what I really know was when we talk about the genealogy, and the important part, and something that was not discussed, was the lineage of the covenant with David. That you know your seed will reign, you know, sit on the throne. And there was an individual from the lineage of David that was cursed, and God promised that no that your seed will be cursed. No one coming from your lineage, from your seed, will rule. But this is the same seed from which Joseph came, who was the father of Mary. But we know Joseph was not his biological father, but he was the legal father, which allowed for him to have the legal reign, throne, to sit on the throne. And therefore, and that was important that there was another lineage that came from David, which was uh, Mary through Nathan. So that was Jeconiah. So I thought that was interesting, and when we got down to that in the different covenants, the rainbow, your people, I'll be your God, and you be my people, down to you know uh, to the David's, your seed will reign to the law on their hearts. So I think it was important that we looked at the covenant that God covenant, the various covenants that God made with His people here on earth. So yeah, it was a lot, and it certainly took a lot of time. It took a lot of preparation. So I certainly appreciate the time